Micah Miller trying to spring a pass ahead. Nobody in front of Jack Paling. Moves on with a blast and scores! Jack Paling with
We aren't giving up on chances, and we just got to bottom line execute.
Waits, passes in front. Great save, Pelosi, as she robs a Gopher in front of her. And that was number 8, Kippen Keller, on the grade A opportunity.
For me as a coach, that's the kind of D you're always looking for, because they don't grow on trees for sure. And he's done a really good job being a captain of a really young team this year.
It's a really cool thing to see for them to really appreciate what I've done on and off the ice.
to the far half wall. Jack Paling trying to play it into the corner. Now Paling turns, squares his body to the slot, sends it up high toward Jack. A shot makes its way through, and they score! Right along the blue line, Nick Paling was in front of the net, and St. Cloud State's got a lead here in the
And welcome back, Husky Warming House Podcast fans. After a week off, we're back for this week's episode, and it's number 37. I'm Nick Maxon. Joining me is again Noah Grant. It's been a week, Noah. It's been a week of fun, a week of getting some things together. I'm sure the folks have already seen the new introduction. Great work on that. Speaking of seeing, Noah, I hear you had a driver's test kind of kerfuffle this week where you can drive. Supposing North Dakota, you only need one eye to drive. Is that right? Is that why there's so many crashes up there in the Great Plains state?
Wow, you really pounced right on it. Apparently,
I absolutely did.
I don't know. Apparently, in North Dakota,
when I've got decades on you, and you give me crap about my age, and I still have decent vision, and I don't have to fail your eye vision test and a driver's license, you're giving me all the more reason to jump on it.
Okay, so I'm going to provide a little background here. I was going to. I was going to say the one thing people in North Dakota apparently can't do is figure out how to use that one eye to find their mask and wear it. Anyway. Anyway, probably just lost some followers right there. Anyway, moving on. So I failed my eye test, essentially. She passed me because I was like borderline on the edge, and she's like, she let me redo it a couple times and kind of kerfluffle my way through it. Now, for most people, and I'm wearing the glasses just because they're blue light glasses, I don't actually need to wear glasses because, as I'm about to tell you here, I have 20/20 vision in my right eye, or did, and have better than 20/20 vision in my left eye. So if you know how your eyes work, your eyes compensate for each other. That's kind of how it works. So my left eye kind of makes up for a little bit of the deficits of my right eye. Well, my right eye's kind of been deteriorating a little bit ever since I was 15. And here's why. When I was 15, a freshman in high school, I was in the back of like one of those big like Chevy Suburbans, right? You know, with the big, you know, the ones that get like 9 miles to the gallon. They're
if you're
terrible.
lucky on the highway.
Yeah, they're terrible. So what was happening was we had the seats flipped down that day because we were traveling, and we had a bunch of like winter coats that were in there that needed to come out for the spring because it was track season. Well, I was pulling these coats out, and they're kind of the Columbia style coats that have the little elastic band with the little like the plastic adjuster thingy where you can cinch them and tighten them up or whatever. Well, when I went to pull it out from underneath this flip down seat, it stretched that band out, and then it snapped and it came back, and it hit me right in the eye. Like my eye reverberated in my head. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So, you know, I cut my eye all open, the inside of my eye that had blood all over inside of it. So my eye, what we're assuming now is, because it's the first time I've ever failed an eye test by any means, is what we're assuming is that my eye has, you know, some sort of, you know, astigmatism or something. And it's just slowly getting more tired and just kind of struggling a little bit. I mean, I still have near 20/20 vision, so it's not like I struggle with it or anything. But yeah, in terms of the North Dakota State driver's license requirements, Noah Grant probably failed his 20/20 vision test. So, but other than that, you know what? My week off was good. I spent my last Friday, when we would normally have showtime, I went to bed at like 6 o'clock. I just slept. I don't know what it was. Like I figured I would be like, oh, it's going to be nice. I'm going to kick back and relax.
I have to cut you off here. You're giving me fuel for the fire. And maybe it's because we haven't really talked like this in a week where it's been building up. But every time, yes, every single episode, there's some kind of old joke. I don't even go to bed at 6 o'clock at night. And here you are, 10 years younger than I am. And you're telling me you're going to bed at 6 o'clock at night.
That's because
what in the hell are you doing, Noah Grant?
That's because I actually work hard during the day, unlike you.
Oh, you do. Oh, you do,
Yeah.
and I don't.
Yeah, you heard
Okay.
me. Anyway,
No,
how was your week off? I'm assuming you stayed up later than my bedtime.
6:30 actually. But no, it's been busy actually around here. A lot of work around the house with the parents, just trying to get things prepped for the unfortunately upcoming cold winter season. Also been doing some cleaning and, different organizing, and, found a good relic. And I'm not going to pull it up for you, but before the show, I was showing you a couple of different hats, and I've been actually looking for these for a while. I'm just trying to put all my stuff kind of together a little bit. And I found an old Mississippi live hat. Now, for folks who are older than me, which is hard to imagine for some of those who listen to this channel, there was an old nightclub / bar in Minneapolis called Mississippi Live. It was a very popular hangout in the late 80s, early 90s, and a frequent first overall pick in 1988 NHL draft by the name of Mike Modano used to frequent that space. My dad, who's been in the hospitality industry all of his life, was the manager of said Mississippi Live bar, and met him one night, had a good conversation, and he ended up getting an autograph from that hat. Fast forward the clock's about 7-8 years later, we're now talking the Minnesota Moose, old school hat that I showed you again. And on that, there's about 4 signatures. And I've always been wanting to know who in the heck were these people, right? And it so happens to be that the former North Dakota Fighting Hawks head coach, yes, I'm doing that on purpose to trigger some people. Dave Haxtell is one of the defenseman signings on that hat. Didn't even know it was him for the longest time, and yet here I have it on an old Minnesota Moose hat back from the mid-90s. So it's been a lot of organizing, a lot of cleaning. It feels good. Getting rid of some old electronics, like old Xboxes that had just been kind of pulled up in storage, but properly recycling them. Took them to a Best Buy so that way they're not landing up in a landfill. But it felt good. It's we're nearing the end of the semester too here at St. Cloud State, so getting ready for some of those final projects, but also really getting amped up for the NCHC pod, which we will touch a little bit later. No, but I guess before we kind of get into some stuff, maybe a little bit of a tease of what we have to come in this episode. Speaking of men's hockey, we are going to be joined by one of the former forwards who has more penalty minutes than he had points, and that would be assistant coach Nick Oliver. We'll break down some of the reverse retro jerseys as well, released from the National Hockey League after that interview segment. And then also, of course, plenty to get to and center ice views and notes, plenty, especially on the women's side coming in these last 10 days, some good, some bad. So no, I think we can kind of get right into it. How about we start with some goal line gripes?
Yeah,
unless you have some other things that we have to jump to beforehand.
I do. I have one other thing. And also I want to mention for our folks, as we touch on the NCHC pod, our scheduling times, our recording times are still going to stay for Friday night. So be aware of that. We'll touch on that a little bit more, but just so you know, the scheduling times for the Huskies Warming House podcast will not change into Christmas break, essentially. The other thing I kind of want to mention too, I had mentioned on our Twitter page that I had ordered one of those Minnesota Wild reverse retro jerseys. I'm actually buying a new computer because of some of the new things that we're doing for the Huskies Warming House podcast. So I actually canceled that order for the reverse retro jersey. I was kind of sad, but I can use that money for a new computer. But I did run a poll and asked what player did people think that I got on the back of that reverse retro jersey. And the choices were Zach Parise, Jared Spurgeon, Kirill Kaprizov, and Kevin Fiala. 19% said Parise, 5% said Jared Spurgeon, 46% said Kaprizov, and 30% said Kevin Fiala. The correct answer was actually Kevin Fiala. Kaprizov, I would imagine maybe in a couple of years, hopefully I'll be buying one of his jerseys because he's such a stud for this team. But you want to talk about a guy in the here and now that's really been lights out for the Minnesota Wild. Kevin Fiala was my pick, but unfortunately it's going to stay in the Hockey Lodge for another fan to pick up. And that's the important thing too. I believe they said the retro jerseys, they're only in while supplies and stock last. So they're not going to, continue to recycle them. Once they're out and they're sold and out and about, they're not going to continue to make them. So just a note for fans there, but happy to all who kind of participated in that one.
I disagree with you on that, and here's why. It's a cash grab by the league, and we all know that. And you can put that out there to drive revenue, and you can drive I guess a demand for that, because all you have to do is say, oh, the demand was so high, we made more. So to me, it's a marketing gimmick. There's no way that this is going to be a limited supply, especially with some of the jerseys we'll talk about later that are in certainly my top 5. I know we're going to be comparing our favorites that were released last week. So I'm not so sure the NHL is just playing with our marketing strings here right before the holiday season.
Well, speaking of marketing season, it actually runs into my goal line gripes. So we're going to jump right in to goal line gripes right now. Goal line gripes. What the? And Nick, my goal line gripe has to do, like I just mentioned, with marketing, and it has to do with podcasts, believe it or not, and more specifically podcast ad reads. And it's kind of a two-sided thing. I can kind of see it on your face. So here's kind of the common gripe that people have about podcast ad reads. The bigger and better a podcast gets, you really want to make sure that you're doing your live ad reads, right? Like, for example, we don't really have ads besides Center Ice View News and Notes. But as you can probably tell, none of our ads are read live on this show. And there's a lot of people that get really ticked off about, ads that are corporate, essentially, where you're reading off of a script and they're canned ads almost, in a sense. Now, I totally agree with the thought process of, if there's, I don't know, what would we name, like carsoup.com or something like that. If you're playing the carsoup.com ad, or the White Bear Subaru ad that you as a podcast host aren't even reading yourself, you're just playing that ad. Yeah, I can totally get why as a listener you would be kind of turned off by that. But I kind of have a problem with people saying that like your ad should be live read ads. Like, I guess like from the perspective of us as a podcast creator, that's just kind of sometimes it can be kind of a challenge. Sometimes it fits really well, and other times it doesn't fit really well. And I think for me, like when I listen to podcasts, if you do live ad reads and your live ad read is so smooth, which would probably never happen to us, but if it's so smooth that you can't tell how good the live ad read is until you're halfway through the ad read, well, a lot of people like to skip through the ads. So, I mean, it's a good marketing move for the podcast, but then for a lot of people, if you know the ad is coming, like I'm going to imagine, like when I listen back to our show, when I hear, for example, the Center Ice View News and Notes, the little ad read that goes before that, I skip through it because I know it's about 11 seconds long. And I know that 15-second jump is going to put you right into the next segment. And that's kind of the purpose. The one after the Healthy Scratch interview is 45 seconds long. So you can skip forward ahead, a couple of times just to kind of be on track. So I don't know. I mean, do podcast ads bother you? I mean, there's some people that won't even listen to podcasts if they have any sort of interruption. But for me, I think you feel a little bit entitled if you're that worried about your podcast ads when you can just kind of skip your way through them. I mean, like, why are you listening to the show in the first place if you're that turned off by a corporate ad? I don't know.
Honestly, to me, it's, do people understand that there's so much that goes into doing these things behind the scenes? And, essentially, if you want to call it being self-employed, well, guess what? The advertisers, they want those ads live read, number one. Number two, they do want sometimes very specific verbiage, especially the more expensive those ad reads get, right? So if you are trying to sell ad space in your podcast and you're saying, I've got, this amount of viewer reach, this is how much I'm charging you. Well, on the back end, they're gonna say, well, that's fine, but this is how we want it to sound. This is the slot we want to be. It's just like a radio show. It's no different, right? It's simply economics. And for those who don't understand that, again, if you're going to do something, you don't do it for free unless you're us. But but at the end of it, right? If you're going to be in that conversation, it gets a little bit more convoluted, a little more complicated the higher up those numbers go. And like you said, you can just skip through them if you really like to. People have to understand there's an economic factor in these as well.
Yeah. And I think a good note for our fans too, when we talk about, our certain segments and stuff, who knows, at some point, maybe we will get advertisers for our show. Hopefully they're going to be local Granite City type things that have a real personal connection to you guys. But at the end of the day, we definitely don't want to create an experience that is a turnoff essentially for a lot of people. So, if you have a problem with our ad reads, let us know, but understand there is a method to our madness when we do create these things. Speaking of madness, though, Nick, what kind of things have you concocted up for your gripes?
Oh my goodness. There's so many that I could do with you, but I'm going to skip those because I'm going to hold on to those for a different day. For goal line gripes, there's a couple, honestly. Coming back home from work today, I was thinking about a couple on the way back. And you ever had those days, where there's probably 3 or 4 that you really like are, I guess, energetic or just have some emotion to, but if someone asks you, hey, can you pick one? You're like, well, why the heck can I pick all 4? That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, if I have to pick one in specific, it's probably going to be the Minnesota youth hockey community. And here's why I say that. We all know that in the age of the pandemic, things are different. Things suck. Minnesota, again, did a dial back on COVID stuff because, well, unfortunately, for a while back, our neighbors, Wisconsin, North, South Dakota, and Iowa, were exploding, and we were kind of in the middle going, we got stupid in stereo with everybody else. On the center part, unfortunately, that wasn't ever going to last. Now, we're the ones that are uptaking. Governor Walz saw that, and he decided that part of his dial back that he would have to pause youth plus high school sports. Now, one thing that drives me absolutely nuts about this is you have 2 groups of people, right? And I'm not talking political right or blue. That's not what I'm talking about. But you have the folks that, their life is sports and that's it, right? And especially when, and again, sports mean a lot to kids. They also mean a lot to the parents too. I totally get that. You and I both have been in this environment, right? Now, on the flip side, you have the families who are also just as much into sports, but also take perspective on things, right? And to see some of the reaction to the tough decisions that lawmakers have to make during these very challenging, different, unprecedented times. All of us in our lifetime, whether you're my age, which according to you is 291, or to those who are 21, Governor Walz is 50s or 60s. This is brand new territory for everybody. And we're all trying to do the best we can to, get through this thing so it doesn't drag on for another 3-4 years or what the heck, the case may be. And to think that, okay, there's got to be a way to let the kids play. I get that on paper, that sounds good, right? And I want to skate too. In fact, tomorrow I won't be able to do my Saturday skate at Egan Civic Arena here in the Twin Cities because that's going to be closed. And I'm not upset. I'm upset by that, but I'm not going to lose my mind over it. So I can kind of put myself in his shoes where, I would look forward to, the Friday, Saturday games, especially, in youth hockey. But this is not 2019 and prior. This is a whole different time. And at the end of it, we all have to take notice that things are changing. Things have changed where we do need to take a step back. And we will come back to, in fact, so Glenn Andreessen, for those who don't know, he is one of the executive board directors of Minnesota Youth Hockey Association. For those who don't know, he used to be the public relations director for the Minnesota Wild. I know Glenn very well. His statement was absolutely beautiful about what has been told and, that this isn't over with. Like, I guess my gripe about it is that people think this is the end all, like, oh, it's only going to be 4 weeks, BS. It's going to be 8 and we're going to go to March and pretty soon people just play that, acceleration card that, 4 weeks means 16. I certainly hope that's not the case. I cannot sit here on the show and say it's not going to be that way, but we have to come together as a community in the state of Minnesota, get through this 4-week period so we can return to the ice. I want to return to the ice as much as possible. Myself, granted, yes, I'm not playing competitively, but getting together with a group of guys on Saturday night at 10:15 at night till 11:45 for me to skate and feel competitive again, it feels great. I want that back too. And I want the kids to go back and have their games as well. But I'm not willing to sacrifice the health of not only the kids, their immediate as well as extended family members, especially when we still until you unfortunately contract something like this, you just don't know how your body's going to react to it. So that's my goal line gripe. I just hope that folks take this in stride and just understand that things will get better. And it's just a minor hiccup along this very twisty road we've been on in the year 2020.
Yeah. 2 things with that. You bring up a good point, kind of talking about, the frustration about the acceleration process. You got to think about this in a way that, and I know it's frustrating, and especially, when your 9-year-old doesn't get to skate and that sort of thing. First of all, hopefully with companies like Pfizer and the like, we're hopefully at some point rounding the corner here. And this is kind of a one-off type thing in terms of, maybe you missed at maximum one hockey season if it gets to that point. And you know what? If you're 9 years old, there's plenty of ways to keep your hands in shape, to, still do all of those hand-eye coordination and little things that train your brain to continue to become a good hockey player. I promise you, there is a way to do that. The other thing that you kind of touched on that I think is important for people to think about here, this problem is very self-inflicted. I mean, don't get me wrong. And some of it has to do with the policies that were in place before within, at the local, the state, and the national level. But the other thing is, COVID happens with transmission between people, and people that, some people that are doing the right thing and it happens to still affect them, but largely people who are doing the wrong thing. So if you want hockey to have some semblance of a possibility of coming back, do everything you can to do the right thing and do what has to be done from a medical standpoint. I mean, COVID is a very, like the data says, and the medicine and the science says, it is a legitimate thing. And it, if you can go and you can get your flu shot annually every year, pay attention to a virus that is 4 or 5 times worse than the flu, respect it and do what you have to do. And hopefully hockey comes back. So I totally agree with you on that. And really excited for hockey to come back. And speaking of hockey coming back, Nick, we had 2 trivias that we have to get to, of course, because we did have an off week and they both do involve the St. Cloud State men's hockey team. So let's jump right to it.
Two Line Fan Trivia is your chance to win. Follow the Huskies Warming House podcast on Twitter at Warming House Den. A new question will be asked every week. Be the first to tweet us the correct answer. Winners will be mentioned on the show, as well as a chance for prizes and more. 1 question, 1 answer, 1 winner. It's Two Line Trivia.
All right, Nick, our trivia from 2 weeks ago involved our last guest for episode number 36, Kevin Fitzgerald, senior captain of the men's hockey team, assistant captain of the men's hockey team. And we later learned that Nick Perbix altered his bio and the facts in his player bio from last year, his junior year. According to his official player profile, though, what is his official favorite book? Nick, do you happen to remember what Kevin's official player profile book actually is?
I think it was Redfish, Twofish, Redfish, Bluefish. Am I right?
Wow. You're kind of right. You're just a little, I don't know, dyslexic in it. I have no idea. It's 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, not
That's what
red.
I said.
No, you said red, green, rainbow, trifecta, Z28.
1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish.
No, you said, you said red fish, roofish.
People will be able to pause, rewind, and see that I did say that.
Do you want to bet money? I could easily swindle you out of $20 right here.
You want to put me on the docket for $20?
Yeah,
because you already don't rip my wallet apart. With all the what was it the golf stuff that we did back during last season? And the baseball. Oh my gosh, it was not good, man.
I'm just saying, if you want to put $20 on the line right now that you said redfish, roofisher, redfish, bluefish, I will gladly take that bet, Mr. Maxon. Just saying.
With my old memory and my short-term memory, I'm going to pass, but I'm still confident, just not that confident to put money on it.
I thought so.
That's what I'm going to go with anyway.
Anyway, speaking of confidence, I believe, I think it was Fight the Pants. Yeah, Fight the Pants that won that last trivia from 2 weeks ago, and he moved. Oh, I lied to you. This was, I'm trying to
There's something new.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out here. I believe it was at Brody Falconer. So Fight the Pants might actually not be eligible this week. Anyway, we'll update that on our Twitter page. Moving on to this week's guest, and last week's trivia question involved Nick Oliver, former captain, Frozen Far participant, inaugural NCHC regular season champion, and current assistant coach. He was the last men's hockey player to score in an NCHC road playoff series. In his senior year in 2015, Nick won which NCHC award? We did talk about this in the show, but it is the NCHC Sportsman Award in 2015. And of course, he spent some time in Sioux Falls before returning to St. Cloud State in a coaching role. So to update the leaderboard a little bit, our first place is Brody Falconer with 8 wins, and then Tanner Heath and Fight the Pants are tied at 4 wins apiece for second place. So thank you to everyone who does participate every week for our trivia. And yeah, your chance to win Huskies Warming House apparel is every Saturday at noon. Nick, I'm assuming you don't have anything to add on that one. So we're going to jump right into Center Ice View News and Notes.
Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
Noah, in Center Ice View News and Notes, plenty of women's hockey news, some good, some bad. What's positive is not actually a good thing, because there were more than 8 positive COVID tests, which unfortunately forced the cancellation of what was supposed to be the COVID Cup Championship. I want to, kind of get your insights into also what this means for, women's hockey moving forward.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with Janelle Sergey, the assistant coach, technically associate coach of the women's hockey team, and she brought me up to speed on a little bit. So she mentioned that 8 were positive on the team, and most of the team is essentially close contact in terms of contact tracing as well, just based on where the university is at and where the team is at specifically. As a result, that did cancel the championship round of the COVID Cup as well. So we don't have any scores to report on that one. As you had alluded to, they were supposed to play Bemidji State University at home this weekend. The game, instead of being canceled, is actually postponed, but with no makeup date. So you're kind of correct and kind of not correct on that one. According to the University Chronicle, over 40 total on-campus cases were reported this week at St. Cloud State University. But as far as the women's team is concerned, they're slated to start up again in 1 week, facing Minnesota State Mankato at home on November 27th and 28th. And then they have a road series December 4th and 5th in Duluth, and then finishing the first half of the season December 11th and 12th at Bemidji State University. One thing to note on this, however, the attendance policy that has been updated for St. Cloud State says that no fans, not even family, are allowed in the building for that home series next weekend, and then also that series on the road in Duluth. Not sure about what the protocol is for Bemidji State, but got to imagine it might be pretty similar.
And I want to add here, Noah, that this is merely the women's hockey protocol. This is still nothing, at least has been formally announced with the men's, which come back in January.
Exactly. And as we kind of alluded to earlier in our discussion for Goal Line Gripes, it has affected the youth community as well. Husky Pups Hockey, which is very popular with the women's hockey team helping out younger players, has also been shut down at the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. So amidst that kind of depressing news in terms of how excited we were to have women's hockey finally starting tonight on November 20th, we do have some good news. This week, the women's hockey team did announce their captains. A former guest of ours on the show just a couple episodes ago, and Kenzie Wiley, will be wearing the C for the women's hockey team. And Hannah Bates, Laura Kluge, and goaltender Emma Paluzny, all seniors, will be wearing the A on their sweaters this upcoming season. And speaking of goaltenders, Nick, the final tidbit of note for the women's hockey team involves goaltender Carly Reese. She got a new goaltending mask from Gilder's Design. Kind of cool. On the one side, it has that St. Cloud C logo, and the Herbrooks National Hockey Center is kind of faded into the background a little bit. And she's got like a row of trees underneath kind of the chin, essentially the chin guard, if you want to call it, that drops down. And then she's got a red stripe that goes through the middle of the helmet with 2 black stripes and a white stripe in between those as well. It's pretty slick looking mask. I don't know if you were a goaltender in men's, women's hockey, whatever you were playing in, and you had an opportunity in the college game to kind of customize your gear, would you take advantage of it?
I think it's underappreciated how, especially for those who don't nearly follow hockey as closely as we do, the artwork and the creativity that goes into a goaltender's mask. There's often a very personal connection involved. Devin Dubnyk, again, Minnesota, well, I should say now former Minnesota Wild goaltender. I think he had his kids on the back pad. Yep. You have, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, this is where Friday brain really comes into full stride. I apologize for that. But, you have tributes to either certain family members or maybe places that you played. It wasn't at one point, was it either John Gidson or Ryan Miller had some of the different Donald Duck characters on his mask. So it gets pretty cool. And there's always a story behind it. And it just, again, the costs of these masks are through the roof. I mean, to have these individually designed, it's almost like a tattoo essentially on these goaltending masks in terms of that each one is unique, and there's nothing that you can ever really get that will copy that. And that's what's really cool about it. Enough, and you can really tell the story of not only the athlete but also the story of the what's behind the athlete too. So to me, I guess if I had to pick, I honestly have no idea. I mean, it probably might as well just be a giant like uprights that says, kick the ball through here because I'm not stopping it basically at the end of it. Because I tried play goaltender a couple times, and when you're basically as big of a mouse and everybody around you as a coyote, it doesn't go very well. So but it's always very cool to sit down and look at the designers and some of the ideas they come up with. It's just something that's above my creativity level. It's just absolutely cool to see what these people create with those masks.
I think if I had a choice between the masks and then you see some of the pads, like David Rennick has pretty cool pads, and of course the men's hockey goaltenders, I think I would probably at least get my mask customized at least once, just to kind of put it on the shelf at the end of the career and say that I did it, and kind of have it as a visual representation. I mean, we talked with Nick Oliver this week about his state championships as well as his Frozen Four appearance, and those two are emblazoned on his wall in picture frames in his own office. So you like to keep those sorts of things as you move on past your career, I should say. But Nick Oliver, he's past his playing career, but ready for his coaching career, as the men's hockey team is in modified quarantine right now, ready 12 days away from the pod down in Omaha starting Tuesday, December 1st. Like we mentioned, our recording times will stay on Friday, even though the pod, they're playing pretty much every other day, 10 games in 20 days for the St. Cloud State Huskies. We'll kind of run you through that here. They do face every opponent twice, I believe. So Western Michigan, Colorado College, Denver, Omaha, and North Dakota will be the opponents that St. Cloud will face. Western Michigan is the only team that they'll face that is their cross bracket opponent. All those other teams, Omaha, North Dakota, and Denver, will be in their Western division of the pod, as there's two divisions in the pod there. So Tuesday, December 1st and Thursday, December 3rd, the Huskies will open up their first week of play. We'll have a show for you on Friday there. And then Saturday and Sunday on December 5th and 6th. And then Wednesday, December 9th, the Huskies will play as well before we'll have our second show to recap for you there. Saturday and Sunday on the 12th and 13th of December, which will be the last weekend series of the women's hockey's first half as well. The men's hockey team will play, as well as Wednesday, December 16th against North Dakota. We'll have a show for you recapping those ones as well. And then the final two games of the pod, as you can kind of see the general trend, it seems like Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays, but then that last week, Friday, December 18th and Sunday, December 20th will be the final two games for the St. Cloud State men's team. And then, of course, we'll have that show that will recap those games, but that will also be our show that finishes right around Christmas break. So we'll have our best of the year from the Huskies Warming House podcast, our top interviews, guests, etc. So look forward to that. Wishing the men's team nothing but the best. Talked to a couple players this week and they seem ready to go. And also mentioning our guest coming up for next week is the other assistant coach in Dave Shayak that will be on our show. We tried to get as many players and coaches on before they head down to the bubble because they're going to be pretty busy, I would say there, Nick. Out of those teams that they're playing between Denver, Colorado College, North Dakota, Omaha, and Western Michigan, is there a series that you're looking forward to, or are there a couple of, those 2-game series, against each team that you feel like St. Cloud kind of absolutely has to have?
Well, it's a pod scenario, right? I mean, these guys are going from 2 games back-to-backs, Friday, Saturdays, and you get 5 days of rest, right, to playing sometimes 4 games in 6 nights. This is pretty much as close to a pro schedule as they're ever going to face without turning pro. So honestly, every game's important because after this 10 games, it's, how many weekends? It's almost half the season here in this pod. So, I mean, you talk about the value of points, especially here in the pod, it's going to be incredibly important. Everyone is going to mean a whole heck of a lot. Not that in this, conference where every, that the parity is just there, right? Even if you have Colorado College and Miami, I mean, yeah, their records may not reflect it, but they're better teams than what, maybe their wins and losses may suggest. For me, it's not who I want to see, it's the measuring stick games. And to me, again, that's going to be against North Dakota. This team, we talked to some players on the show. We talked to all the coaches, and there is really a sense of anticipation and a sense of excitement for this current squad for the Huskies. And I really feel that they can make some noise and be at least a top 4 seed in the NCHC conference, Noah. But again, the North Dakota, on paper at least, is the team to beat with all the depth they have up front in the defensive core, especially. And that, again, Peter Tomei coming back, Jordan Kawaguchi, their star captain as well, was the leading point getter from last season. And again, some of the freshmen that are coming in, the highly touted freshmen, both front end and the back end. So to me, those are going to be your measuring sticks. Where are you at in terms of, the number 1 team pre-ranked in the season? Again, according to John Buccigrosh, again, from ESPN. So to me, those are the games that I will be watching. And speaking of watching here, Noah, if things go right, KBSC Radio, which as I'm a part of, I should be on the call for every single pod game as we head into the next couple of weeks. There's still some details that we have to iron out. It's not 100% yet, but things are trending that way. So we'll keep you folks up to date when that announcement does become official.
Should be interesting to see how that North Dakota team adjusts to not having fans travel with them too. They're a group. And the reason I mentioned that too is the only other group that has kind of really got the ball rolling as far as league-wide play is concerned. The Big Ten was in action this week. The Golden Gophers, Bob Motzko's Minnesota Golden Gophers, pretty much routed Penn State this weekend. And the Michigan Wolverines look like a pretty deadly hockey team as well. But Gopher hockey, Mariucci Arena, 3M Arena was pretty much empty, but that's pretty much par for the course, I would say, nowadays, unfortunately. The only other notable action in college hockey, too, Long Island University won their first game versus Holy Cross, a 3-2 win in overtime. Actually, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, the Michigan Wolverines, and LIU were the only 3 teams entering play today on Friday that were undefeated for this season. So pretty impressive there. Congratulations to them. Our last topic to get to in Center Ice View News and Notes involves a little bit of St. Cloud State hockey here, and it's retired coach, or formerly retired assistant coach for St. Cloud State, Mike Gibbons, joining the staff at Bemidji State University, of course, his alma mater, joining in a coaching position. He was a standout defenseman there and started his coaching career there. I saw a little bit on Twitter about a couple people having kind of angst about the fact that, Mike said he was retiring, came on our show, talked about how great retirement was going to be, and then kind of accepted this coaching position here. And who knows? I mean, we don't know what it's like in that room day in and day out. Maybe there was a reason where Mike didn't want to be around Brett Larson, but from our perspective, we don't see any of that. And to be honest, the way the coaching world works in hockey, I'm going to imagine Mike was just sitting next to the lake having a brew. And Bemidji called him up and kind of said, "Hey, Mike, would you be interested in maybe a 1-year or short-term contract, kind of helping this program kind of excel a little bit and make some strides in the WCHA and that sort of thing." And I don't know. I don't read that much into it. I'm happy for him. I think he's going to be a good fit there. I mean, he played there. He started his coaching career there. And if there was any place that he was going to end up at, post-retirement at St. Cloud State, it's not really an FU by Mike Gibbons. It's Mike's just got an offer that seemed like a good fit and decided, you know what, maybe I'll give it 1 or 2 more years, another kick at the can. I mean, do you have any thoughts on this, Nick? Because I thought it was interesting how people kind of had this notion that, Mike left just to get out of St. Cloud and he's going back to Bemidji. Like, well, 1, he can do whatever the heck he wants. And 2, not every coach that leaves St. Cloud State hates St. Cloud State. Listen to our Bob Motzko interview. Like, I'm a little bit triggered about that too, but anyway.
Well, first of all, yes. First of all, again, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, right? So could it be there? Sure. But Pitchfork Nation is what I like to call them, right? The ones where, it's always a conspiracy. It's always something going against the community, right? That's kind of the thought process with some of these folks and some of the responses we've seen on social media, especially on Twitter. And first of all, if that was the case, why would he announce his retirement a year prior, right? Bob Motzko said it himself. There comes a point too where you've been with the program for so long, you feel like it's right to move on. And I don't know if that was the case with Gibbons. Again, maybe I'm first of all, I should say I'm in agreement with you. I don't think there's any ill will towards St. Cloud State. I think he was ready to slow down. unfortunately, with hockey coaches and hockey people in general, you rarely ever do that, honestly. You're always constantly moving. And with Mike Gibbons, he is a movement guy. He's a guy that is always busy doing something. And it probably right. It takes one phone call from somebody who, again, we talked about the Minnesota Moose. Frank Steratore coached the Minnesota Moose for at least a season back, and now coaching Bemidji State. Somebody very well, they call you up and say, hey, man, how's retirement looking? Good. Why the heck are you calling me? Well, Eddie Oldchuck, again, taking a scouting position with the Seattle Kraken, a new NHL gig for him. And maybe the offer was just like, oh, like you said, why not, right? Now, again, it doesn't necessarily indicate something that was wrong with St. Cloud State. And again, my mind blows when people just immediately assume that was the case. I don't read that at all. And again, when you're sitting at home, even when in my line of work, I should say this, I talk to a lot of folks that are retired. And one of the things that, I guess often themes I get is retirement sucks and retirement is great. And they're for the opposite reasons you might think. Retirement sucks because when you're in a rhythm and you have a schedule, right? Even if it was getting up for work, it was something that got you out of bed. When you're in that transition to retirement, from the conversations that I had with people who have gone through that transition, they go, there's a point where I was like, I almost took a part-time job because I was so bored. And I don't know if that was, again, I'm speculating. Was that the case with Gibbons? Might have been. And again, when you're a competitor, when you're coach for so long, you still have that 6-year-old, I want to win the Stanley Cup. I want to win a national championship. It's always in your head. I don't think it ever goes away, honestly, for somebody as an athlete or even competitor, whether you're a coach or on the ice. And I think for some people that just never leaves, no matter how old you get. And I see Mike Gibbons as that type. And again, as you mentioned, it had to be the right fit for him. He started his coaching career there. He played there. And like you said, very beautifully, if it was going to be one spot that opened up and he probably would have accepted, it's going to be Bemidji State. I don't think you would have seen him go to Duluth. I don't think you would have seen him go to Western Michigan, Omaha, you name it. I don't think he goes to the Gophers either. To me, this was the one position he would have accepted. And again, I'm happy for him. Bemidji is a preseason ranked team this year. They've got a really good core. I think this team is going to make some noise, especially in the WCHA, as well as, again, hopefully later on NCAA play. And if you're going to take a different coaching position, why not make it with a team that's on the up and up? So good for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of liken it to this right before we transition to our Healthy Scratch interview segment. Nobody in Duluth was that mad at Brett Larson when he decided to move on and become head coach at St. Cloud State University. So Huskies fans, take it with a grain of salt. Honestly, it's just coaching. It's just hockey. Congratulations to Mike. He gave us 12 or 13 good years here at this university in St. Cloud. So yeah, 13 years in St. Cloud. So be grateful for it. I know another man who also gave 13 years at St. Cloud State before moving on to bigger and more interesting things. The only reason I say bigger is because the U is a little bit bigger than St. Cloud in terms of size. Anyway, speaking of a bigger thing for the Huskies Warming House podcast, we had a guy who not the biggest guy, I guess. I don't know why I'm going on with this trend. But anyway, Nick Oliver joined us here on the show, and he was a fantastic interview. Nick's kind of when you see him around the rink, he's all business, very serious guy, very dedicated to his craft. So it was nice to kind of catch him and sit down and have him relax and open up a little bit. Nick, what can the fans expect from our other Nick on the show this week?
A little bit different side, like you mentioned, of Nick Oliver that you normally don't get to see again when he's at the rink. I mean, he's focused. He's very much, business form. He doesn't really break character. He's not like it's the SNL characters when they do the Californian skit. I mean, he's not like that. He's focused. He's zeroed in. Nothing can break him out of that. But you get him out, off his schedule. You get him to come on and chat with us, some hockey people. I mean, you get a little bit more human out of him. And I think you're going to, folks who are listening to this or watching on YouTube are really going to enjoy some of the conversations that we had here with Nick Oliver.
Absolutely. Week 1 of 2 with the men's hockey assistant coaches. Dave Shayak joins us next week, but this week it's Nick Oliver.
With a new guest joining every week, it's a lineup chock full of players, coaches, fans, and more. This week's special guest is the Healthy Scratch.
And joining us this week, coming into us from St. Cloud State University, is assistant coach Nick Oliver. Nick, thanks again for joining us, and pre-bubble here before you guys head down to Omaha.
Yeah, great timing, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on, and Big fan of the show and the work that you guys do. You've had a lot of great guests and just a lot of great stories, a lot of great hockey talk. So for someone that really likes to hear other people speak and learn from other people, it's been awesome. So appreciate you reaching out.
Well, we'll definitely send that check in the mail here too, Noah. But I'll kick it over to you for the first couple of questions, because I know that I have to actually write him the check as you're asking him the question. So go for it.
Yeah, and spotlight's on you today, Nick. Of course, I have to keep both of you straight. You got two Nicks on the show today, but Nick Oliver, Roseau, Minnesota native, spent your USHL days with the Fargo Force. Before that, you were a 2007 state champion, and we're going to get back to that in a little bit. So save that one in your back pocket. But Fargo Force. 121 games played, 37 points. And that's something that I kind of want to touch on as it moves into your St. Cloud career a little bit as a player. You ended up being a draft pick of the Nashville Predators, 4th round overall in 2009, which is when you started playing for the Force. And where I'm going with this lengthy question is, both in Fargo and at St. Cloud State, you were a guy who your numbers don't exactly jump off the page. And I don't mean to say that in a way that, is condescending or anything, but scouts, were still pretty high on you. And I kind of want to know from your perspective, and especially as someone who's gone on into player development at the USHL in Division I, what was your game like? I mean, what was something that you think in your mind really attracted, St. Cloud State to you and the Fargo Force to you, because you weren't a guy who, put up these eye-popping numbers? I mean, are you a 200-foot guy? Or, what made you so successful at the USHL level in terms of your play?
This is a good question, because I haven't had to think about this for a long time now. But no, growing up in Roseau, Minnesota, great hockey community. I was fortunate enough to commit to St. Cloud State when I was a sophomore in high school, so I was a young recruit. And then had an opportunity to hear my name called at the draft as a senior in 2009, and obviously that was a special moment for me and my family. I think getting into junior and college hockey, I assume the Nashville Predators probably hoped that I kicked a few more goals in than I did during my career. But I as a player and now as a coach, I think, I've always had a real team first mentality, always been highly competitive and tried to outwork people at every step of the road. And funny story about my Fargo Force days is we've got a couple of recruits now in Fargo. And I was talking to one of them last week during NLI signing period. And he said, Coach, he said, I know that you played here, right? I said, yep, I spent 2.5 years there, almost 3 years. He's like, yeah, I saw your name on the wall as a record holder here. I said, oh, really? Where is that? He said, in the bathroom area by the urinals, they have plaques listed of all-time leaders in franchise history. So obviously they've got points, they've got goals, they've got assists, they've probably got, goalie wins, what have you. And as soon as he said that, I knew where it was going. And he went right to the penalty minute leaders, career all time. And he said, yeah, he goes, I was using the bathroom the other day and I looked up and I saw your name 5th all time in penalty minutes. And so we had a good chuckle about that. I said, you're going to score a lot more points than I ever did there. Just try to stay out of the penalty box a little bit too, because they like having you on the power play. But no, I think, as I progressed in the NHL draft, it's fun to watch now, being on the coaching side of it, because I think there's less certainty nowadays. And I think after you get through your top round and a half, even when you get to that back half of the second round, I think teams are really taking kids that they can project, and that's a word, because project to fill certain roles at the pro level. And I think for me, obviously, being a forward with a little bit of size, I think that was an opportunity to project me in a certain spot. And yeah, as I got into junior and college, I realized that I wasn't going to be a gifted offensive guy, so I had to try to bring value in other ways, and that was being highly competitive and being a great teammate and doing what was ever was asked of me. So, yeah, that was that's the long and the short, more so the short of my my junior and college playing career.
You talk about, the draft pick with the Nashville Predators. St. Cloud State, at least 3 draft picks on that roster. Now 4 with VT Miettinen jumping into the mix. You've got Sam Henches, who's a later round draft pick for the Minnesota Wild. David Rennick in his senior year with the Los Angeles Kings. Nick Perbix as well in that mix. Guys like that, when you look at them now in that player development role and coaching, and especially working with the forwards, what do you see from those guys that, not that every player at the Division I level isn't good, but what do those guys do that kind of bring them up to that status, that NHL teams are looking for? Like guys like Sam Henches and Nick Perbix, what do they do that's kind of puts them in that upper tier that gives them that NHL consideration, as you look at them working with them every day?
No, great question. I think with both of those guys, I think it's those two. I think we have David Rennick, and then VT now is a Toronto pick, but they have talent, right? They have talent. They pass the eye test. All four of those guys. Obviously, David's a goalie, but they're skilled, talented, creative hockey players, and I think that's where the game is been headed for a while now, and especially the NHL game. And to see a kid like VT at 5'8.5" getting drafted, that wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. So I think those teams are looking for guys that have those skills, that have an ability to play fast. And then with kids like Sam and Nick, they have the projectable frames where they know college hockey is the perfect route for them, because they have 3 to 4 years to really spend extra time in the gym and put that mass on. So I know that's a big thing with a lot of NHL people now is they're leaning more and more towards these college-bound players because their runway's longer. They have longer to develop before they turn pro, and when they do turn pro, they're ready, right? They've been playing against older players, and they're physically and from a maturity standpoint ready to step in and play.
Nick, I want to build off that a little bit because, yes, you have NHL draft picks on your roster, but you also have plenty that are, undrafted as well. And, as far as these players, you talk about a guy like, say, Jimmy Schultz, who, signed after his collegiate career. There's still opportunity to develop, obviously throughout your collegiate career. But, do you approach those types of players any differently that haven't been drafted? Or, I guess, how do you best keep them motivated to know that, yes, maybe your number wasn't called during the draft, but there's still an opportunity to make some impressions throughout the 4 years here at St. Cloud State?
No doubt, and that's a big part of our recruiting process too. Is we aren't a team that has a lot of draft picks, right? We've got 4 on our roster this year. I think 2 years ago when we had the number 1 team in the country, we had 3 draft picks on our roster. So schools like St. Cloud State have had a lot of success with the older player that's developed later and gone through junior hockey and been an older freshman. And so for us, I think it's probably more so important and a feather in the cap of the program that we've been able to develop all these undrafted guys into NHL players. And I think that's a really cool thing. And like I said, it's a huge recruiting tool for us. When you go through guys like Jimmy Schultz and Blake Lizotte, Ethan Prowse of the world, Patrick Russells of the world, it's a program that's had a lot of those guys, and no, it's important to us. We don't treat them any differently because it's our job here as coaches to obviously develop these guys while they're here to whatever their capacity is, right? Whether that's being a really good 4-year college player or reaching their dreams of playing at the highest level.
You kind of talked a little bit too. You had an interview with Mick Hatton, and you talked about how your time coaching in the USHL versus Division I, you get that time, that extra extended time to work with players as opposed to just that year or two you might get with them in the USHL. But when we mentioned earlier about your journey to the Fargo Force in the USHL, it actually started back with a 2007 state championship with your dad behind the bench, a guy that coached both football and hockey at Minnesota Crookston, behind the bench for that championship game. He's currently, I believe, an assistant at East Grand Forks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
How big of a mentor was he in your transition, at that young age, committing as a sophomore in high school? And then when you commit as a sophomore in high school, you run into a guy who you end up working with later by the name of Mike Gibbons. How big of an influence did Mike Gibbons have on you? Kind of transitioning, I think of, for all of us, when your dad plays such a big role in your hockey development, you're looking for someone to kind of help you at that next level because obviously your dad's not going to be there, right? And I think Mike Gibbons, he's just kind of a father figure to everybody. But how is... Long question as I'm trying to spit out words here. Your journey to St. Cloud State, going through Roseau, what were all those experiences like?
Yeah, it was, going through Roseau, and you can see off my shoulder here, I've got our state championship banner plaque from 2007. And that was my sophomore year. And just to be able to go through that with my best friends and my dad behind the bench is something that we talk about almost regularly when we get together, and how special that moment was. But no, my parents, so they're both in education. My dad's a high school gym teacher. So I joke with him. I say, is that really education? And we'll have some back and forth on it. My mom's been a longtime elementary principal. So school was really important for them. And St. Cloud was the first school that called me, and Coach Motzko brought me in on a visit. It was Bob Motzko. It was Eric Rude, and it was Freddie Harbinson, who's now the head coach up in Penticton. So that was the staff that originally recruited me. And I remember I came down to my visit here, and they were playing Minnesota at home. And you guys might remember this. It's a great story. So they've got, to all the students that came in the building, they handed out these little fans, right? These little fans. And when the lights turned off, they lit up and said SCSU or Go Huskies or whatever they said. So the place is packed. It's rocking. And somewhere along the lines, a few of the students figured out that they could pull these batteries out of the fan and essentially use them as a sort of throwing weapon. So I watched the game. It's packed. Huskies win. And after the game, all of a sudden, a huge, 4,000 batteries came raining down on the Gophers as they were heading off the ice. So I think my mom was a little bit mortified, but I was excited. I was jacked. I knew it's where I wanted to be. So I went home and I give my dad a lot of credit. My mom and my parents, they just said, this is your decision. You got to go with your gut, and you got to go where you feel comfortable. And for me, I knew it was St. Cloud State, and it always came back to the people for me, and where I felt the most comfortable and where I knew I'd have the best chance to succeed. And I wanted to be a part of a program too that hadn't gotten over that hump yet. And to me, that was special, being here and being part of some great teams and great teams in Husky hockey history. And above the Rosa one, I got our Frozen Four picture up from my sophomore year when we won that thing in Toledo, won the regionals. So it was a fun journey getting here, and then obviously playing for Coach Gibbons, and then being able to work for him. Just a phenomenal man, phenomenal person. I've learned so much from him. Like, I remember when I was playing in Fargo, me and Corey Lieberman, who's now the assistant coach in Madison in the USHL, we had part-time jobs at Play It Again Sports right by the rink. So we'd finish practice, we'd run over to Play It Again Sports, and we'd sharpen skates and stock the shelves and do whatever for 3 hours at night. And without fail, this is when Gibby still used to live in Egan, which is not close to St. Cloud, the campus, right? It's on the opposite side of the city. So it was at least an hour 20 drive, maybe longer if you hit it in rush hour. So without fail, once a week, my phone would start ringing and I'd see Mike Gibbons. And so I would tell my manager, I'd say, hey, my future coach at St. Cloud State is calling. He'd say, oh, no problem, go in the back and take it. So I'd go take it, and the calls were never shorter than 45 minutes. And I could hear the road in the background, I could always tell he was making the drive home from St. Cloud State. So it was really cool that we were able to build that bond and that relationship early. And I think that's one of the first big things I learned from Gibby was just how important it is to, I think a lot of people think that when you recruit these kids, you get them to commit or you get them to sign and that's it. You kind of just wait till they show up on campus the next year and then you start coaching them. But that relationship really starts, 1, 2, 3 years out, however long they're committed, and getting to know those people and building that trust level. So I think that's one of the first big things I took from Gibby, and he got me out of quite a bit of work there at Play It Again Sports. So I wasn't upset about that. So yeah, he's been a huge part of it for me.
Mike Gibbons, also a gym teacher by trade as well. So maybe that connection runs in the hockey world, I'd say. You mentioned your St. Cloud State career, 145 games played, 19 points, captain in your senior year, 3-time academic team. Obviously, you mentioned the Frozen Four. First ever NCHC regular season championship went to St. Cloud State in the Penrose Cup. 3 consecutive NCAA appearances and a sportsmanship award for the NCHC in 2015 for you as well. During your time at St. Cloud, I mean, do you have any pretty funny stories? We had Johnny Brodzinski on. I believe you played with him a little bit too. Any funny stories? And then anything that really stands out? I got to imagine the Frozen Four has probably got to be a big one. But are there any, certain weekend series or certain, crazy antics that goaltenders did that really stick out from your time here at St. Cloud State that just made it so memorable to be a Husky and ultimately have you come back here in a coaching role?
No, it was. I don't think you get the experience that our guys do here at St. Cloud State or that I did when I came through at many other places. Like I truly think it's a family atmosphere, it's a family culture, and again, it goes back to the people and the coaching staff and who they bring in as players. I got a lot of stories. I don't know how many I can share on the air. But no, it's, like the best part about it was we did all of our guys where we lived within probably a 2 or 3 block radius of the rink. So whatever we did, we all did it together. Like whether it was Sunday football, whether it was, an NHL tournament on Xbox, like we were always doing stuff together and always competing. And I think that was a fun culture. And it carried over to the rink. Like when we got to the rink, it was guys battled and competed at practice and they worked their tails off. And then when you left, you went home and made dinner together. And again, guys are just doing everything together. So, it's truly a family atmosphere for sure. And that Frozen Four was special, obviously. Some great wins along the way. Some great, obviously winning the first league or the first Penrose Cup in NCHC history out at CC with a Brodzinski hat trick. Swear to God, he was the CC Tiger killer there during his career. I don't know how many goals he averaged whenever we played CC, but no, just like a lot of great teams, a lot of great people. It's true to this day. Like I think, I got married this past summer and I married a St. Cloud State grad. And I think 6 of my 8 guys in my wedding party were ex-teammates of mine here at St. Cloud. And Coach Larson was there. He always jokes. He goes, God, I didn't know if it was a wedding or if it was an alumni event. He goes, I couldn't tell. So I just think that's the cool thing you get here at this place and in the university and the program is truly guys are connected and they stay connected when they leave.
Nick, I want to kind of build off of that a little bit, just only because you already mentioned about your parents being educators and, coaching, a lot of it is about educating it and, developing, right? I want to know a little bit, do you think your parents and their livelihoods had an influence on you becoming a coach? And the second part to my question is, did you ever have an inkling that you wanted to be a coach? Was it kind of an organic thing within yourself, or was it somebody giving you a call and said, hey, I think you should try this?
No, so I grew up in Crookston, Minnesota, actually, where my dad was at the University of Minnesota Crookston, which is in the NSIC, same conference as St. Cloud State in a lot of sports. And so he was for 15 years, he was either the head football coach or the head men's hockey coach. So growing up, I would literally get on the bus when school ended, and the bus would take me right out to campus. Like I'd get that last stop out to UMC. I'd hop off and I would just go hang out at football practice for the next 2 or 3 hours, and just run around and be a kid and be around that environment, that sporting environment. And then afterwards, of course, like the coaches are meeting. So I'm hanging out in the meeting room. I'm running around, like getting beat up by all the college athletes. They're sticking me in the laundry bins and pulling pranks on me. Right. So that's what I grew up around. And I think it obviously helped me to understand, I think at some point, whenever I got done playing, that's what I wanted to do. And so when I came to St. Cloud State, obviously my goal was to play in the NHL. Few development camps later out in Nashville when I was playing one-on-ones against Roman Josi and Matthias Ekholm and Ryan Ellis, and I couldn't even get over the red line with the puck on my stick, and I had to just dump it in behind him and go chase. I said, I don't know if I'm cut out to play at this level. So it was kind of the tail end of my senior year, and it was, I don't know if you guys remember that 2015, it was an up and down year. We were just coming off, we lost Dow, we lost Jensen, we lost Gravel, we lost Brodzinski, we lost some good, we had Brodzy that year. But we lost some good players. So we were a little bit 500. We were riding the roller coaster a little bit. And then we went into Omaha. We had to win that series to to keep our NCAA hopes alive, and we got a sweep out there. And then we had to beat North Dakota the first game of the Frozen Face-Off, and we won a really hard fought. It might have been 2-1. It was a really tight game. So we went on this great run and beat Michigan Tech in overtime at the regional, and then we played North Dakota to go to the Frozen Four in front of a packed building, and didn't get the job done there. But it was a great run, and I just remember after that game ended, I talked to my dad, and probably a week after, and he asked me, he said, well, what are you thinking now? What do you want to do? And I said, you know what, Dad, like, I don't know that I need to play any more hockey after this. Like, this experience that I've had, being able to be a captain here, being able to do this with my best friends. For me, yes, I could go play a little bit of minor pro, but I didn't need to, and I was comfortable with that, and which was weird to say and think about, but it was just one of those things where I knew that it was probably time for me to move on, and so through the summer I ended up getting a really good opportunity to head down to Sioux Falls with Scott Owens, who's a longtime Division I head coach. And I knew at that point that was probably a really good opportunity for me to get in with an outstanding person and an outstanding coach to learn from, and spent 3 good years there, and then ended up back here at St. Cloud State.
Yeah, 84, 74, 0, and 10 in 180 games down in Sioux Falls. Interesting, though, you mentioned Brett Larson, attended your wedding. You actually knew him back at the Select 15 Festival and kind of started building, a professional relationship from there. How did that phone call kind of come about? Because it's interesting when you read back when you first signed, Brett signed in April in 2018, and then you were not far behind, both of you in your 3rd season now. Brett said there was only one guy that I really kind of had an interest in, and that was you. Do you take pride in that, knowing that, a guy like Brett Larson, who's won national championships at the University of Minnesota Duluth, said, I want Nick Oliver on my bench, and he's only been coaching for 3 years? I mean, how did that all kind of come about?
No, and I'm extremely grateful to Brett still to this day that he's allowed me to be back here and kind of living out my dream, being a Husky again for a few more years. Kind of feel like Van Wilder sometimes, 4 more years. But no, it was a unique process, obviously, with St. Cloud being at the regional there in Sioux Falls. I actually got to go to the game. Things didn't go our way that night. And then the dominoes started to fall a little bit with Coach Motzko and Rabs leaving to go to Minnesota. And when Coach Larson got hired, it was, like I said, a quick process. But I think having that prior relationship with him and not overestimating the value of, like you said, we met at this Select 15 camp out in Buffalo, and I think that's good for any people in hockey or any profession to not be afraid to put yourself out there and challenge yourself to try different things and do different events and do different camps and present at different speaking engagements, because you never know where those relationships will lead. And I think, like I said, I think having that relationship, I think being an alum here, I think putting 3 years in the USHL and really cutting my teeth on the recruiting side of it and getting a lot of good experience there, put me in a position to be a qualified candidate for the job. And like I said, just very, very grateful that Coach picked up the phone and called. And I don't know if there's any other job that's been a quicker yes response. You know what I mean? I didn't have to check with too many people on that one. I think it was, and again, that was a big part of why I wanted to get into coaching, was with the hope of knowing I wanted to coach in college, but with the opportunity to someday get back here. I just didn't know what would happen 3 years into it.
Nick, I want to build off that a little bit, only because, you talk about coaching and you're a young coach and, as far as being, again, new to the coaching realms, I mean, this has been quite the test going back to March, going through 2020, the pandemic, and then now going into the Omaha bubble. Has this year been, as much maybe inconvenient, maybe the word for most folks, but has it also been a great teacher for you as a coach as well?
Yeah, you learn a lot going through it. And I give our guys a lot of credit. Like, our players have been phenomenal through this whole process and the changing landscape. And unfortunately, they're not living in a world right now where they're getting a full college experience, between classes on campus, between fans in the building, between a normal schedule, right? So they've been phenomenal, but I do think it makes you grateful of what we are able to do still. because there's, every day it seems like now, unfortunately, there's schools announcing that they aren't going to be playing this winter. And so I think that's a common message to our guys is that, hey, even though we've been practicing for 2.5 months, which is the longest training camp of anyone's lives, we still get to do it every day, and we get to be here. And I think from a coaching standpoint, that's been fun. Normally in the fall, your training camp goes really quick, and we're out recruiting all the junior showcases. We're running around watching all these games where we actually don't get a lot of quality time with our own players. Usually the assistants are kind of running around, and the head coach is boots on the ground working with the team. So that this has been really fun to be able to learn different things from a coaching side about development and keeping things fresh and new for our guys through this longer training camp. But also having the ability to spend all this time with them, I think is great, especially with a lot of younger players still on our roster. I think it's been really beneficial for them and for me to kind of learn from them and learn more about these guys on an individual level and keep trying to develop their games.
Speaking of developing your own role as a coach, Nick, let's go back roughly about a year, we'll say 11 months or so, to the Mariucci Classic, a time where you got to experience things a little bit differently behind the St. Cloud State bench. Brett Larson was at the World Junior Championships in the Czech Republic, halfway around the world, and you were head coach, getting to pay witness to Zach Okabe essentially, going off essentially in a 7-2 win versus Mankato, and then playing the University of Minnesota in Mariucci in that tournament. What was that experience like to kind of get your foot in the door and get a taste of head coach at the Division I level? And do you at some point have an interest in becoming a head coach, or do you feel like you want to be a St. Cloud State Husky for as long as you can?
It was fun. It was fun going through it with Gibby. He was phenomenal. He's been a head coach, but it was kind of the first time where you're like, holy smokes, you actually have to really focus and pay attention on what time's the meeting, what time's the meal, what time's the bus leaving, does that put us at the rink too early, are we eating at a proper time before the game? So I think from a preparation standpoint and a logistical standpoint, probably me being younger, being naive to how difficult that seat is as a head coach and all those things that really go into it. Not just writing lines on a piece of paper while you're drinking your coffee in the morning, right? You're constantly worrying about things. So it was definitely challenging, but I'm happy and thankful I had Gibby there. And we were tag teaming that thing the whole time, and it was a lot of fun. But for our players to have essentially 2.5 practices to get ready to play the number 1 team in the country and come out and play one of our better games of the year, it just shows where that team was headed and where our leadership was taking us, and a lot of that came down to the older guys. So yeah, that was fun getting that win, and then obviously we'd like to get the next one the next night. But no, great learning experience, a lot of fun. For me, I think I'm happy to be here as long as they'll have me here at St. Cloud State, and wherever that leads, it leads. But for right now, I love the staff that I'm working with. I love the group of players that we have. I love the recruits we have coming in. I think the fans have a lot to look forward to the next few years with some of these kids that are going to be coming on campus, and the type of player they are. But they're all phenomenal leaders. I think I would be shocked if 2 of our 3 guys that we're bringing in next year aren't going to be captains on their junior teams this year, and bringing guys in that have that type of character. So I'm fired up to be here, and obviously got to keep pushing this thing forward and keep getting us over the hump. And that's my job and our responsibility. But as long as they'll have me, as long as Coach Larson will have me, I'm a Husky.
Well, I guess I can take it. Just a very quick question from me, and only a couple more from both of us, Nick. So again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. I guess when you kind of mentioned this year's team and then the upcoming process as the future develops, we're recording right now on Monday, November 16th, so we're less than half a month away from you jumping down to Omaha in that bubble. What has kind of the process been like for you, especially with the current news of the women's hockey team and COVID, getting your guys to make sure that they're doing what they need to do, but then once we get down to Omaha, what can fans expect from this St. Cloud State team? Because I guess from Nick and I, the other Nick, in my eyes, we have expectations that this team's going to be a group that's going to surprise a lot of people.
No, we're hoping so for sure. I think, a couple weeks out now from leaving, we leave the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I think we actually go into a modified quarantine here on the 18th, so Wednesday, which essentially is a 10-day period where the guys are only allowed to really be at their houses and then at the rink here, just to try to mitigate any risk. And knock on wood, we're in a good spot with that right now. And I think just with everything else going on in the world and in the States, I think it's more important than ever that our guys stay smart with everything and realize how close we are. And they've made a ton of sacrifices up to this point to get to that bubble healthy, and we're hoping that they keep pushing that envelope forward for sure. And then, we're excited about the group this year. I think we saw a team last year. It was really a tale of two seasons, and a little bit of that was to be expected, having 16 freshmen and sophomores playing in the NCHC. That presents a lot of challenges in itself. But I think fans and our staff and our group saw a team that really started to take shape on hopefully what we can build on into this year. And I think that's been a message most of the fall is, guys, just because it's a new year, we're not starting over from scratch. It's our responsibility to build on where we were when things shut down last year. So I think we're going to be deep. I think we're going to have great team speed. We love our goaltending this year, 1 through 3. We love the 4 forward lines that we can throw out on a given night, and we love the depth to our D-core. So I think that's a word that keeps coming up for us is depth, and the ability in a 10 games and 20-day sprint, as you will, to be able to utilize different guys and utilize fresh bodies and hopefully not miss a beat. Certain guys will be in and out of the lineup, and being able to play around with that and hopefully not have a drop with our level of play.
I want to build on the depth piece, Nick, because, looking at the schedule, December 1, you open up the season against Western Michigan, and it almost seems like throughout your time down there, it's a game almost every other day. So it almost is like an NHL schedule. I think depth's going to propose, essentially a huge advantage to the teams that have it, number one. And number two, is the coaching staff really focusing on, I guess, conditioning? Because, again, for the body recovery with that many games in a short amount of time, and with the way the NCHC is so competitive, every point matters. Has that been the focus for you guys before heading to Omaha and in the pod?
For sure, Nick. And we've, especially with how we're built a little bit, up front, we're not a big, heavy, physically imposing team. We have speed, we have skill, and we have ability to put teams on their heels with our skating. And with that comes a little bit of a lack of size up front. So really what we've done this fall, because we knew we've had more time here, we really have waited to transition from off-season training mode with our lifting 4 days a week and continuing to push the envelope off the ice, really until about a month ago, when we started getting into more of a normal training camp type setting where we're down to 2 to 3 lifts a week and more on ice work, more team drills and more team structure stuff that way. So yeah, we've been really cognizant of that. And, we have our strength team has a great plan heading into the bubble of different equipment we're going to be able to bring and different workouts we're going to be able to continue. And a lot of that will be lighter, obviously, with our workload, but just to make sure that we're monitoring our guys and that they're at their peak and they're ready to play every night, because it's going to be a battle for sure. It's mentally, physically, it'll be a great test and just a great experience for our guys to learn and grow. And I know they're fired up about it. They just got done watching the NHL do it. So I think they're all juiced to get into that bubble and play a ton of hockey and really see where we're at as a team.
This is my last question, Nick, and it's kind of a two-parter, and it's only got one part hockey because I know we've been bombarding you with a lot of questions here. My first question is, with the departure of Mike Gibbons that we talk so highly of in this show, brings in a new face in Dave Shayak, and obviously it's an adjustment for you and Brett and the team to bring in a new assistant coach. I mean, what has Dave brought to this group so far that you've been able to see as you get ready to transition to the pod? And then when you're down in the pod and then when COVID is gone, what does Nick Oliver like to do in his free time? I mean, I heard you mention some chell tourneys. Are you still pretty good on the Xbox? I mean, what do you like to do? I feel like you might be a good golfer. Either that or you're going to prove me wrong and you're a terrible golfer. But first, what do you think of Dave Shayak? And then when you're not hanging out with Dave at the rink, what do you like to do in your free time?
No, Dave's been a phenomenal addition to the staff. I know he checked almost every box, I think, that Coach Larson was looking for when Gibby decided to retire. And he brings a wealth of experience in recruiting. He's got a lot of recruiting networks that necessarily I don't have as a younger coach, because he's been doing it so long. Great track record of developing defensemen. You know, you look at that decor they had last year at Western, like it was really good between Samuelson, Cam Lee. They had some really good kids back there. So, he checked almost every box and he fits our culture. He's a great person. He's a great family person. He's from Brandon, Manitoba. So he knows this area of the world and the Midwest here. So, he's been a tremendous hire, and so it's been great. It's been great for me, and selfishly, it's fun for me to be able to work and learn from a different person too. And so I think that's been one of the cool things about my journey, is being able to work for and with so many different people, and obviously he brings a really good perspective too to Husky hockey. So he's been great. In terms of my free time, it's probably not as exciting as you'd think. No more Xbox. I'm off that. I decided during a COVID summer to buy our first house and get married all in a span of about 6 weeks. So that's been pretty time consuming and wild in many different ways. But you know what, like this fall, like we can't go out recruiting or anything. So it's been nice. Like I've been up twice now at my parents', they have property up just south of Roseau, great deer hunting property. So I got up there bow hunting one weekend. I was up there for rifle opener. So just being able to see family a lot more. My dad's coaching the elite league still. He was in year 10 this year. So him and my mom, every weekend they're down, they come and spend the night at our place. So I get to see them a lot. So, I think when I got into coaching, I didn't realize, probably again, a little naive as a young guy, how time consuming it is, and how much we put into it every day. And so when I do have time off, it's relaxing with my newlywed at home, and we've got a dog, and we do the whole boring, homeowner married thing now for most of it. But average golfer, I'm probably one of the worst out of my friend group. Like Andrew Prochno's really good. He's about a scratch. Brooks Birch is really good. Joe Raycamp's really good. I won't give Jimmy Murray that much credit. Like I think I can go toe to toe with him. But no, that's been fun too, getting out and seeing those guys a lot too, because a lot of them are based out of the Minneapolis area now. So no, it's been a good fall.
Last question for you, Nick, and again, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I think it's important just because, I mean, we all love what we do as far as the broadcast aspect, the players who play on the ice, you as a head coach. So none of this means anything without the fans, right? And I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe tell the folks who are listening, the fans, I guess maybe something you're excited about, or just maybe a message in broad to the Huskies fans who are anxiously waiting for this team to finally start beginning play here in December 1. Any message to the many Husky fans out there?
You're a huge part of what drives this program. Like I mentioned the story earlier about my visit to St. Cloud State, and a big reason why I wanted to be a Husky was because of that atmosphere in the building when we played Minnesota. So that's all I've known here, and that's what we hope to continue to build and be a part of. So I just think everyone that's following is a huge part of it, and we're going to love your support when we're down in Omaha, when everyone's following online, and obviously after the new year, we're doing everything we can. Granted the guidelines to get as many people back into this place and get it rocking again, because we need it. Our guys feed off of it. So again, we're a unique program in the sense that we're only going to be able to build and get as far as everyone together. And whether it's from a fan engagement standpoint, whether it's from a university standpoint, St. Cloud State's always been special that way because everyone's in that together and everyone has a huge passion for seeing this program succeed. So Yeah, we're fired up to get some home games in the building here after the new year, and hope to see as many of you people out here as we can.
Certainly will do, Nicholas Oliver. Thank you again for joining us. Good luck down in Omaha, and of course, the start of the season. Again, thanks for joining us, and the best of luck to you moving forward.
Appreciate it, guys. Great job as always. We'll stay in touch.
We'll stay in touch, Nick. Thanks again.
Take the Huskies Warming House podcast wherever you go. Find the newest episodes or listen to your favorite on iTunes and Podbean. Get all the latest news and updates at huskieswarminghousepodcast.com and look for our Facebook page, the Huskies Warming House Podcast, as well as our Twitter feed at Warming House Den. Our Twitter feed will host trivia, updates, and questions for fans, as well as a mailbag where you can tweet us anytime with your questions, concerns, or listener suggestion. And for business inquiries, email us at huskieswarminghousepodcast@outlook.com.
And again, thanks to Nick Oliver for joining us this week. Fantastic interview. And again, the very best of luck to him and the men's hockey squad. Again, just a few days away from going to Omaha and joining that pod circus down there in the Silo series, as those who have been saying it around the social media. But Noah, speaking of kind of a media circus, as you could say, the Twitter world, the Facebook world, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, I don't know what the kids use these days. You got to tell me. But the reverse retro jerseys for the National Hockey League were released late last week. Some good, some bad. It's all a matter of opinion. We're going to debate our top 5, our bottom 5, and a couple of other tidbits. Noah, I'm going to start with you just because I don't know how you want to do this exactly. Do you want to go top 5, or do you want to do top 5 bottom and go right to my 10? I'm just going to throw it to you, and I'll let you kind of take care from here.
I think maybe we should start with the worst 5. Maybe that's probably an easier one just because right? Also, kind of a fun note to mention as well when you mentioned TikTok and the young kids. Fun fact, Nick Maxon is very much older than Nick Oliver, which is kind of a weird thing to imagine. Anyway, hey, I had to get at least one in. It's been 2 weeks, right? Anyway.
That was a horrible. I mean, your game needs to get better, man.
Well, I don't want to totally discombobulate you, man. Anyway, speaking of discombobulation. I
don't even know what happened.
Hey, speaking of discombobulation, though, Nick, we're going to start with the worst of the worst. The Detroit Red Wings, what is going on here? This one looks like a practice jersey. And I get it, Detroit only has 2 colors to pick from, so their reverse retros really didn't have a whole lot of options. But it's a practice jersey. It reminds me of Michigan State's jerseys back in the day when they used to just have the one stripe down the side. They look like practice jerseys. I'm sorry, Detroit, you missed the boat on that one. Number 4, Minnesota fans are going to love this one. The Dallas Stars. I thought that one was a definite miss. Just too much white going on in that uniform. I mean, you can't really see the logo. The stars, the word stars is in that cream color, essentially. I thought it would have been cool if they would have kind of flipped it a little bit where they have the old school Dallas Stars jersey style from like 2006 when Marty Turco was in his prime. And they have the jagged star there. And if you remember the old jerseys, they used to have the color fill in at the bottom for the white jerseys. I thought it would have been kind of cool if they would have filled in the top color and just kind of left the bottom white. I don't know. But definitely a miss for me on this one. Speaking of another Central Division foe coming in at third worst for me, Nick, the Winnipeg Jets. I don't get the slate colors. It's a slate uniform with kind of blue on the outside. I mean, they're a nice, looking jersey, but it doesn't really have any homage to anything. Like, if you're going to do something like that and do a slate colors, you might as well have picked the Atlanta Thrashers colors, if you ask me, if you really want to pay homage to where you came from. I don't know. And the Jets, sometimes it's kind of like, I know that the original Jets are in Arizona, but you have so many options. I don't know. Definitely a miss on this one. Sticking up in Canada for both my last 2 selections, Nick, the Ottawa Senators coming in at 4th worst overall. It's not necessarily a bad jersey per se, but it's just a red jersey with black stripes. The only thing that's nice about it is that 2-dimensional logo looks really pretty. I think that's going to look good for the Sens, going back to that in the future. But it's just, again, it's a stock jersey that you buy at your local hockey store and slap a logo on it and call it good, in my opinion. So not a fan of that one. And then Toronto was the other one for me at 5th worst. And I know it kind of pays homage a little bit to kind of the late 70s, early 80s and that kind of style of jersey that the Maple Leafs used to have. But it's just, I don't know. It just looks like the kind of like Christmas sweater you buy your grandkids and hope they wear it and enjoy it. So definitely was not a kind of fan on that one, Nick. Before I kick it to you too, the one tidbit we're gonna have our first little jersey. It's maybe we'll leave these for the end. Actually, Nick, what do you have for your 5 worst jerseys?
5 worst. Okay, so I don't know if you're reading off of my list, honestly, because they're pretty close. But yes, first of all, Detroit. All you did was slap a gray silver band around the elbow, and that was it. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, it's lazy. That goes to also the Edmonton Oilers, which is another one of my 5 worst. There's not much different there. You have the orange up here on the shoulder, which normally it's blue, but other than that, it's not different. The Winnipeg Jets, I agree with that one there. It's just a color change. They use this logo in some of the outdoor classics there. I'm with you on the Dallas Stars as well, just because it's just, the color scheme is just weird. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's white and white. I mean, it's almost like the California Seals for goodness sakes. It's ugly as heck, man. I don't get it. But the worst of the worst for me, and this might catch some people off surprise, is the Nashville Predators.
Oh,
yes. And here's why.
I'm going to disagree with you on this. The only reason I'm going to disagree with you on this is because my high school jerseys were this style, but they were purple, gray, and white. So I kind of have a personal connection to it. You know, it's funny, and I'm going to let you describe the jersey, but for me, I kind of had a middle of the pack. They kind of remind me of the Vancouver Canucks too, kind of that middle of the pack. Like they're meh, but why don't you like them so much? I'm kind of surprised by this one.
So I've never been a fan of the shoulder down the sleeves, like half, like color thing. I've just never been a fan of that. I know Toronto's gotten their jersey, but with that gray, I don't know, the gray with the yellow and the blue, I don't know, but to me, there's just no point in that design. I don't know, just to me, Nashville could have done, I think, a whole heck of a lot better, because their logo, like their primary logo, is just awesome. And then they brought back their original secondary on the patch there. I love it. I just don't think they incorporated everything as well as they could. Now, with the original 6, Chicago, Boston, we talked about Toronto already. The only one that'll differ is Montreal, because that's going to be in a different list that I have. But they were just essentially color flips of the same thing. You talked about Ottawa. So I couldn't just stick with that list, just because to me, they all kind of encompass the same thing. I just feel like Nashville could have done a heck of a lot better to what they had, because I think their jersey could have been really, really sick. And to me, they just fell flat.
You know, I guess I have connection to my high school jersey, but my high school jersey also had a Native American Indian head as a logo on the front. So I don't know if I can really have too much love for it there. But anyway, let's stick with you here on this one, Nick. What's one jersey that you feel is getting a little bit too much hate that you think shouldn't get as much hate in terms of this group, that people most of them put it in their bottom 5, but you don't think it should be there at all?
The Vegas jersey. The Vegas jersey, I mean, a lot of folks don't understand it, number one. The Vegas Thunder was an old IHL team back in the 90s. And a lot of folks, again, for those who have hockey and don't really follow it very closely, never knew that even Vegas had a hockey team before the Vegas Golden Knights. Well, they did. This is an homage to them. Now, for some maybe casual fans, they would have thought, oh, that's kind of a ripoff of maybe the old Vancouver sweaters back in the day with the big V's on it. Maybe they just shortened it up a little bit. That's not the case. So to me, I like the Vegas one because, again, they're not that far in the league. This is what their 4th season. And you had to pay homage to something of the history. So I like the fact they went to not necessarily a NHL team, but a team that was professional, that was in the Valley there for some time, and decided to give a little bit of twist and mix and match. So I'm not as low on the Vegas. Now, they're certainly not in my top 5. They're middle of the pack for me, but I don't understand why people have graded them to me so low.
Yeah, and who knows, they might look better on the ice. I kind of had them at like bottom tier, middle of the pack, I guess. You know, and the other thing too is Vegas, they kind of essentially screwed themselves a little bit because they just released their gold jerseys as well too. So I mean, you kind of, what else were you supposed to do, honestly? So for me, the one jersey that I don't understand why it has so much hate, the Pittsburgh uniforms. I know a lot of people were kind of disappointed that Pittsburgh didn't go with kind of that baby blue or some other kind of style from the earlier days. I don't know. It's kind of a mix of old and new, I think, a little bit. I mean, pretty simple striping, has the Pittsburgh lettering on the front with the essentially the drop down. I think of it like a drop shadow thing in Photoshop, essentially, is what it reminds me of. But spending too much time creating podcasts, I tell you. But it's I like it. I mean, it's simple, and I think it, Pittsburgh fans, they're going to buy it. They're not going to be particularly upset about it. Now, if you want to talk about a team that was really a miss in terms of yellow lettering on the front of their jerseys, the Gophers actually brought back their 100th anniversary uniforms. And, here's the thing. At first, when I saw them, because they do pay homage to the original pants that the Gophers used to wear, which was those yellow pants with the maroon and white trim. And you know what? At first, I hated them, hated them. And now I only kind of hate them. And I think where they would have been able to tie this together a little bit is the numbering on the back of the jerseys and the lettering on the front needed to be maroon. I think if, because the socks and the striping on the jersey was maroon, if you make the letters and the numbers on the back of that maroon and have yellow pants and yellow helmets, I think you can kind of get away with it a little bit ish, but Pittsburgh definitely has a better setup with the black pants, black helmet. And I really like these uniforms. Nick, let's move on here. Your top five. Who's in your top five?
Woohoo, this is a good one. So top five, and they're no in particular order. And I should have mentioned that my bottom five are also the same, just random five. The Minnesota Wild one I do like a lot. Now they missed on one thing for me. Now the logo, I get it.
Here we go.
Yes, here you go. It's going to be a North Stars reference. I just wish they would have done like an M instead of the Wild logo. I still think it looks fine. I love the colors. I love the striping. It's a very clean look. And I'm just being my usual Minnesota fandom picky right here, so that's fine. But I really wish they would have done an M design, maybe even something retrofit to the North Stars. Maybe you could have put a design element there. But I still think it looks pretty good. So that's in my top five. Number 4, Montreal. Some folks don't like the Montreal one. I do. It's essentially a color swap. It's the old blues. I really like it. I think it looks really slick with the red crest there across the middle of the jersey. It's really, really, really nice. So I'm in there with me, and I don't care what you say. Third on the list for me, the Carolina Hurricanes / the Hartford Whalers. It's gray, which is fine. I think, again, on the ice, you're not really going to know that it's gray or white, to be honest with me, but the old whales on the shoulder there, again, the big W and then the seagull there. I mean, or I shouldn't say the seagull, but the whale tail. You can tell it's Friday, man. You can just tell my brain is fried. But love that jersey. Looks slick. The next, I have almost an honorable mention because I do like the LA Kings jersey, the old purple and gold, again, paying homage to where they came from.
Yep.
No, I'm just totally kidding. So no, the purple and gold, homage to their old basketball relatives. I like the look. It's the old one with just the new colors, slick look there. That's my honorable mention. But the other one, the Phoenix / Arizona Coyotes with the original Coyote logo, then the purple with that, I guess you almost want to call it maybe the mountaintop kind of thing on the bottom there. Kachina. Yeah. Whatever. It's I'm trying to just use my eyes right now, man. Something apparently you failed at. So with that, I mean, it's not a primary color. They've never really had a purple jersey before, and I really, really like it. But my absolute favorite has to be the Colorado Avalanche going back to the Quebec Nordiques. That is 100% my number one jersey. I love the coloring, and I love the little stars that it has going back to, again, the secondary logo there for the Nordiques. I love how they incorporate the burgundy in there. It just looks phenomenal with the blue numbers there. It's a very clean jersey. If there's any one jersey I might get besides the Wild one, it might be the Nordiques for the Colorado Avalanche. That's my top five, Noah. I'm very curious, after being so negative about mine, what you have to say about your top five.
I'm not that negative. I mean, we have a couple commonalities. Also, do you call the things on the bottom of the Nordiques logos, you just call them stars?
They look like stars from afar.
They're called fleur-de-lis.
Yeah, I know. Isn't those like kind of flower stars? I mean, same thing.
Goodness,
same thing.
I need to bet more against you for certain
yes,
things.
You do.
Anyway, the Avs was number one on my list as well, no doubt. Number 2 coming in for me was the Minnesota Wild's uniform, and I'm going to tell you why. Like I told you in the pre-show, why the Minnesota Wild went with their logo, because no other team picked a logo that did not exist in their history at one point. So you're asking the Minnesota Wild to create a logo that they haven't particularly used. The only M logo that they have is essentially the shoulder patch that they have on their home jerseys right now, which I guess they could have used, but you wanted the M in the North Star style fashion. I think that's why it didn't happen. But as a Minnesota fan, take what you can get as far as North Stars apparel is concerned, in my opinion, I guess. Number 3 for me, I like the Florida Panthers ones a little bit. The blue uniforms with the red shoulders and kind of the, that Florida Panthers color scheme with the blue, the red, the white, and the, I don't know what you want to call it, that beige off gold, whatever you want to call it. That's a tough color scheme to work with, in my opinion. So I think they did a pretty good job with that reverse retro there. Coming in at number 4 for me was that Hartford Whalers uniform. No doubt about that one. Of course, the Hurricanes have already utilized the green version of that jersey, so that's a little bit of another reason for that reverse retro as well. Number 5 for me, Nick, Philadelphia Flyers. And I know it didn't really change.
Ugh.
I know it really didn't change a little bit from what they used to have back in the early 2000s, but I always kind of liked that style. I thought they were one of the few teams that were able to make that work. I have visions of Eric Lindros coming down the ice in one of those uniforms, or was it Keith Primo in 5 overtimes getting the job done?
Keith Primo.
I kind of liked them. I think they're a lot nicer than people give them credit for. But speaking of that, Nick, if you have zero objections of my list, which I don't really care if you do, we're going to
say why you didn't ask.
We're going to move into our very last jersey here, and that is the one jersey that you think is getting way too much love from the hockey community. Who you got?
Oof, there's a couple here. To me, and I don't know if it's really mixed, but St. Louis, honestly. I understand the style there. I just think the colors are they're not there for me. It's almost too loud, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm no fashion expert, but,
You're a traditionalist.
Well, yes. At the end of it, yeah, they tried to go with that 90s very, if you know St. Louis Blues hockey, that jersey from the 90s there was, it's going to be etched in your brain with a laser if you've ever seen it before. And they tried to, I guess, modernize it a little bit. To me, it kind of missed the mark a little bit. I don't necessarily know. I think to me, it's just too much red. That to me is, it's not even like a color they really haven't used very often. They've kind of dropped it from their color scheme for quite a while. They've basically been using just like the blue, the white, a little bit of gold, and maybe even almost a darker blue for their modern jerseys. And to bring back red in their color scheme in such a holy heck way, like you're walking into a 70s room where it's like, hasn't seen light in maybe 25, 30 years. And you're like, what color is this, man? So to me, it's seriously, it's not terrible. I get the idea. I get why they did it, but to me, I'm just not the biggest fan of it. Maybe it's far from others.
Yeah, if people need a visual description for those who are audio listeners, and if you are an audio listener and are curious about these, definitely go check out all these uniforms when you listen to this segment. But what they did is they took the 1994 style St. Louis Blues, the blue jerseys with the yellow trim and the red essentially bottom, the slanted bottom, and they flipped it on its head and made it red, yellow, and then blue on the bottom. So yeah, it's a little bit bold. I definitely agree with you there. The other jersey that was kind of bold too, I really actually kind of liked the set of stones that they had with not a lot of options to go to. That was the Anaheim Ducks. I kind of like theirs. It's not like it's not a flashy jersey by any means, but to have the stones to go back to that jersey, I think it was impressive. But for me, my final jersey, the one that's getting a little bit too much love, and it's not really love in terms of like nice or not nice. It's the New York Islanders. And the New York Islanders went back to their 1980s style, essentially similar style to what they have now in terms of the trim and the striping on the bottom. Man, bring back the fish sticks guy. Bring back the dude in the orange jersey that was in the net, the little fisherman guy or whatever, or at worst, just pick an orange jersey if you're the New York Islanders. I don't particularly know. Like, did they someone said they maybe have missed the deadline as far as the thing is concerned? I don't believe that, but it's like,
no, there's no way.
But it's just like again, the New York Islanders, they're a team like the Winnipeg Jets who you had a fair amount of options to go. You weren't the Detroit Red Wings, for Pete's sake, Right.
I have an idea for you. I don't know, like it's not a visual for those who are listening again on some of our podcast host websites, but could you imagine so Seattle Kraken, right? Their whole, I guess, theme is around, the Pacific Ocean, the sea creature. And you talk about the fish sticks guy, the Atlantic Ocean. Could you imagine the designers of the Kraken design, the logo, getting together with those with the fish stick sky and maybe creating something with that. Could you imagine? I think that would be a really fun adventure to see what they could come up with, because with the fish stick sky, you could play with that. I mean, you could recreate him the entire way. And again, you could come up with not necessarily like a whole new color scheme like the St. Louis Blues apparently wanted to do, but you could do something different.
So if you were to do that, thinking about the reverse retro theme for a team that hasn't even existed yet, the Seattle Kraken, that'd have to be a red jersey then. So you got some real logistical challenges as far as how do you get a guy who in the logo is not going to be red, but is going to be a deep blue, a lighter blue, and white, essentially. You got to get him on that jersey somehow. So that's where I think the challenge.
What I'm saying is the designers who designed the Seattle Kraken logo, who very modern, very different, make them do the New York Islanders fish sticks. That's what I was trying to say.
Sure.
I think that would be a collaboration worth watching, just because I think Wade would have a really good idea of how to bring back that guy, redesign him completely, maybe a little bit of a different color scheme. Because you're right. I mean, it's similar to what, some of the other teams did. There's really nothing different about it. It's just essentially bigger, I guess thicker stripes on the orange and the yellow. To me, even the main Islanders logo on the chest almost seems like it's smaller. Don't you agree? Like it almost just seems like they shrunk it.
Yeah.
And there's no, I guess no shoulder colors, but at the end of it, yeah, there's nothing different to me about it. And then again, we know with hockey fans, they're passionate people and they're going to be behind their team 100%, unless you're the Minnesota Wild in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's come on, it's true. But at the end, I think for the most part, most of these jerseys, I mean, a reverse retro, it's such a difficult thing to pull off. I mean, for everybody, and especially for the Canadian markets. I mean, we go to Montreal, you go to Edmonton. Really, the only one that went kind of crazy was Calgary, going back into old, the old dragon with the flames coming out. Man, that's a sick jersey.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's a horse.
Whatever, it's a dragon in my head.
Okay, and second of all, I really love those jerseys. Just a note for the fans too. This reverse retro presented, I believe, by Adidas. This is the first time that there has been a league-wide jersey initiation where all 31 teams have participated in the same jersey creation or style, if you will. So kind of a cool concept. Good to see the NHL shake it up in the offseason. They're still targeting that January 1st start date. But for us here at the Huskies Warming House Podcast, we'll be back here around Thanksgiving time with Dave Shayak for episode number 38 on November 27th or 28th, whatever you wanted to call it. But nonetheless, Nick, we're going to sign off for this show. And thanks for sticking with us as we're back from a week off. And we hope to see you next week.